Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies.
Hello everybody, it's the Lawn Gnome and welcome to your July 2017 episode of Fandom Feature. If you're new to my show, welcome. This is actually one of my newest additions to my channel this year. This is when I actually gush and fanboy about some of the all-time greatest movies, in my opinion, because they're all back there and I love them dearly. So, in anticipation for a movie that is coming out this month, which is one of the newest installments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man Homecoming starring Tom Holland and Michael Keaton, and already reviewing the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films on my channel. There will be links at the end of the video so you can take a look at them. I thought that it was finally time to talk about the original Spider-Man films from Sony that came out in the early 2000s, and just talk about what they were in terms of comic book films and landmark films in general. So around this time, this was when X-Men had finally hit the box office, and the comic book movie still was not taken very seriously, but X-Men was starting to change things, and that was when Sony decided that it was time to bring our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man finally in a big budget film to the big screen, especially considering the fact that thanks to movies like Star Wars Episode 1 and The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the technology had finally caught up to the concept, so we could finally see a very awesome web-slinging Spider-Man. So you take a well-known director like Sam Raimi, who is well-known for Bruce Campbell's Evil Dead films, and you take a good young cast including Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, a starting to get much more well-known James Franco, and you throw in a very well-known actor who could play a very good hero or mysterious villain in Willem Dafoe. So this movie, Spider-Man, was definitely one of the coolest films that I had seen in theaters. It was fun, it captured the true comic book origin story with a little bit more of a modernizing twist because it wasn't taking place in the 1960s. You saw a young man who is trying to become a hero, but at the same time he's trying to find true happiness in his life, and the question is, will he be able to balance being a hero and just being a normal person? So this movie is chock full of fun, action, and very good characters. I think one of the things that a lot of people were a little bit iffy about was Tobey Maguire going to be a great Spider-Man? And you know what? To a certain extent, he is. He definitely captures the innocence. He captures the fact that while he is a good person, he is not perfect. He is brilliant, but he's not always reliable. As Spider-Man, he definitely was fun to watch, although, for me, I didn't find him as witty or as funny as Spider-Man normally is in the comics. And even though he's only been in Captain America Civil War, I will say that Tom Holland really captures that truly fun element of Spider-Man, which is something that Tobey Maguire lacked to a certain degree. Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane was okay. I mean, she is a good actress. I have seen her in lots of things. But for me as Mary Jane, I really didn't think that she was the greatest thing in the world. Same thing could be said about James Franco. I'm not really his biggest fan, but he was tolerable as Harry Osborn. But Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin was unbelievable. He really gave me a true sinister comic book villain, and as time went on when it came to comic books, we've seen a lot of actors who are portraying classic comic book villains really taking a lot from what Willem Dafoe did and really adding it to them, and sometimes a little bit different. Like, he is not what Ian McKellen is as Magneto, or Michael Fassbender for that matter, but they are two completely different villains. Green Goblin is sinister, but he's also one of those deliciously fun, evil characters to watch, much like Mark Hamill's Joker in the Batman animated series, so he really was good. And there's that scene in the movie in the balloon parade where he's flying off on his glider and he goes, "We'll meet again, Spider-Man!" Like, I just love that. That is classic comic book villainy 101. But the highlight of this movie, as well as the other two, it has to be J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. He made the perfect live-action J. Jonah Jameson. I loved his hilarious cheeseball wit and his stupid one-liners. They are so funny. You even got the unknown at the time Elizabeth Banks. And another interesting thing I found out that I didn't even realize within this movie was the fact that Octavia Spencer had a small role to play. Also, you had the legendary Cliff Robertson and Rosemary Harris playing Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and the special effects were absolutely fantastic as well. Just finally seeing Spider-Man in that classic suit with the web-slinging action. The CGI was very good, not to mention a very great score with Danny Elfman. Also notice Bruce Campbell in all three of the movies, and as we move on to Spider-Man 2, I think that that is probably the best of the three films. You have Alfred Molina playing Dr. Octopus, and he was such an amazing villain. I like that they gave these villains in the Spider-Man films so many different dimensions, and that's something that's really been lacking in the Marvel films to date. But the fact that they were managing to balance out the development of the villain as well as the development of the hero, I think that that is a very big positive. And the action sequences and the fight sequences between Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus are absolutely amazing. The only thing that I was a little upset about within that film specifically was the fact that they really focused a lot on the love story. I really felt that the love story was way too overdone. I think it was overly done, overly sensitive. Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man cried way too many times. I really feel that that took away from that, and I really think that, especially in Spider-Man 2, we focused more so on the love story than we did as Spider-Man being Spider-Man. I mean, there's a very interesting plot point in regards to the balance of hero and human in this movie, a lot more so than they had in the first Spider-Man film, and there's also a story brewing between Peter and Harry in that film in terms of Harry Osborn having a hatred for Spider-Man because of what happened with his father. But then we move on to Spider-Man 3. I don't own Spider-Man 3 on DVD. I saw it in theaters and I just absolutely despised it. So I still feel that even though I love Spider-Man 1 and 2 so much, it was only right that I did review the third one. And I still do not enjoy this movie at all. I don't necessarily think that it was Sam Raimi's fault, but there was so much that could have been done to make this movie so amazing, and the fact that it was just destroyed, especially focusing on one of the greatest stories, possibly the greatest Spider-Man story in the comic book, the Black Costume Saga with the alien symbiote, the fact that they could have done so much more, especially when you're adding people like Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, and Topher Grace as Eddie Brock, who of course becomes Venom. I just don't know how they possibly got this all wrong. I feel that they really did bad things with the Harry Osborn storyline, with the whole thing with him getting bumped on the noggin, and then that whole thing with Gwen Stacy, which also was really, really weird. Like, Gwen Stacy really was the first love of Spider-Man's life, so the fact that they started with Mary Jane in the first film, and then they just brought Gwen Stacy into it, they didn't even do much with them, and Bryce Dallas Howard does play Gwen Stacy, and she is a very good actress as well. If you're new to her acting, you probably saw her in Jurassic World, but this was also one of her earlier roles. There's so much wrong with Spider-Man 3. I feel that they could have done so much with Sandman, especially because of the fact that they got the costume absolutely accurate, not that it's really hard to do, and I just didn't really enjoy Peter Parker in this movie as well. When they have Topher Grace playing Eddie Brock, again, they could have done so much more with his character as well, especially because of the impact that he really has on Spider-Man's world in the comics, but you know, the whole story with the black costume, there's so much more to it, and they just make it somewhat secondary. And then when Eddie Brock finally gets the symbiote, they should have just done this. That's it. Make Spider-Man 4. Give Venom an entire movie with Spider-Man focusing on defeating Venom. Because of the fact that they just rushed it, add way too many villains, because we all know what happens to Harry Osborn in this movie. Just way too much in such a small amount of time to do so, and it just became a big mess. And it's not like this was something that the comic book film has learned from in regards to its mistakes, because we have seen some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies go in this whole way too much, way too fast, big mess sort of deal, and unfortunately to a certain extent some of the DCEU films are like that as well. So I'm kind of glad that I saw Spider-Man 3 again, because now I remember why it is what it is and why I just don't like it. But crazily enough, now that I've seen all three of them again, and in anticipation for what the new Spider-Man movie is going to be, I'm actually saying that these movies are not as great as I thought that they were. I mean, the first two are great watches, they really are, but I feel that now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's gonna be so much more added to Spider-Man, and I feel that these movies may not be fan favorites in the next 10 years or so. But anyway, I am still a proud owner of the first two because they really were a landmark as to what the comic book film was going to be, and thanks to them, we have some very strong and very serious attitudes towards comic book films today. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Put your comments in the box below and let's discuss the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. And I will see you in the next one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.